great and so far.
All right, welcome to York, Pennsylvania for our new construction panel. We have 5 of the best sitting here. Holly McCall, Steve Johansson, everybody rave. John Loftus, Emily Davis, and John Lindemolder. Quick note, whenever you're talking, only speak into the microphone. They won't be able to hear you at home otherwise, so hold it close enough to your mouth. If there are any questions out here in the audience, please raise your hand and we'll come to you. We're going to go for about 45 minutes to an hour with some loaded questions. They, just so everybody knows, the contestants were provided the questions before the inquiry, or the inquisition, I guess it is. So about 45 minutes to an hour. Try to keep your answers sort of brief because we want to get to a multiple people. We'll ask a question. We'll probably have 2 of you answer those questions. If you have some input, please raise your hand if you heard something or want to say something different. So let's start. Holly has the microphone. You ready, Holly?
Ready.
Is it turned on?
It is.
Perfect. So we're going to start with number 1. The common myth is you can't negotiate with a new build. Please give some examples of successful tactics or past negotiations that you were involved in.
So builders don't usually like to negotiate on price only because they have an established price and they want to keep the appraisals, good in the community. But you can negotiate on options. You can, upgrade their appliance package, things like that. You can negotiate on closing costs, seller help. And one time, I'm very proud of this one. I had a buyer who had 3 months left on his lease, and this was like before COVID, way before COVID. They and he wanted to purchase this home that was probably wasn't going to be around in 3 months, and so we negotiated that the builder paid to get him out of his lease. So,
thank you. Who else wants to take that question? Or Justin, did you have a question?
So you were representing the buyer or the seller in that scenario?
I was actually, so this was when I became a buyer's agent, I was representing the buyer, who happened to be my cousin as well. Yeah.
Okay. Who else wants to have some input on that question?
I mean, the only thing I'll say is I think it depends on the market you're in. So really, it's irrelevant whether it's new construction or resale. I mean, we should all know the market we're working in. And, right now, I don't think you're going to negotiate too much on new build, but that could change if the market changes. So that's the only thing I would add.
All right, John, take the next one. So do you recommend buyers get a home inspection?
Ooh. Well, home inspection for new construction, as you're going through the building process, there's certainly going to be people showing up, right? So township's going to show up. They're going to have their process of checking each phase of the build. So what I tell my clients is you're always welcome to get a home inspection, right? So when you're starting a new construction, certainly there's no house to really inspect. So it's like, okay, if I am going to get a home inspection, when am I going to do it? I've been, and this is my personal take, is I'll tell people to get it around the 11th month. So you're there for a while. If you get a 1-year warranty, which every builder is a little different, most are going to be 1 year. Have them go in around the 11th month, do your home inspection at that point. So add to that punch list. So that way the builder can come back. They can fix everything that you can physically see, as well as the things that maybe the home inspector pointed out. So you have a more comprehensive list.
Okay, great. Thank you. Emily worked for a builder. I forget the name of it off the top of my head.
Yeah, J.A. Myers.
J.A. Myers. So in your experience with J.A. Myers, did buyers ask for a home inspection, and how did you handle that?
It was rare if they did. Sometimes the builder refused to let them do it. So you really want to talk about that up front as far as if you want to get the home inspection before you settle. I think I had 2 that did, and the things were very minimal things we would have found when we did the punch list anyhow. But it's very tricky. If you want to do it, you need to make sure you speak about it up front, have it in your contract. But instead of trying to bring it up after the fact and be like, okay, well, we settle in 2 months, we want to do a inspection.
John, what's your experience with home inspections?
Home inspections is ultimately going to be your buyer's choice, and it becomes part of the negotiating package. So when you do that, we've done a couple of inspections, but for the most part, you get a warranty, a builder's warranty with every new construction. And, I think that usually suffices. The biggest thing we sometimes run into is probably a radon test. Those are things that people, because most builders will put passive systems in. So the only thing some of our buyers may want to do is a radon test, but other than that, for a builder, it's mostly the warranty covers that. And if you explain all the stuff that a builder was warranty, when you hand them that and make sure they read it and do their due diligence and understand what the warranty is all about, you're going to be fine with that. So.
Is everybody out on Zoom world, are they able to hear the responses? Can someone respond? Oh, okay, good. Wonderful. Thank you. All right. Next question. Let's go with John, since you have the microphone. What is expected of a buyer's agent during the building process?
Well, once again, this is going to be different for all of us across the board because every builder is a little bit different. So as a buyer's agent, you bring a client to new construction, you want to make sure you're part of that process in the beginning. And then after that, you let the builder take over. That includes selections and all that, but you want to, keep contact with your buyer. But for us, it's, you want to be there the first day or the first time, bring them in. Let's get this whole thing worked out, be part of the negotiating. And then after that's done, then really you want to release that client as much as you can. And I know it's hard for some people, to that builder for selections, for all their pieces that are going to be part of it. And then we'll see at the end and we'll go from that part. But you do have some agents that do like to get involved in every step of the way. So it depends on the agent. For us, it's better that we just get it started and then you get paid 6 months later with a smile on your face.
How about you, Emily? What's your experience with buyer's agents?
Just to piggyback what John said, if you're an agent that you really want to be hands-on when you're representing your buyer, make sure you educate yourself with that builder specifically, because if not, you're going to go in, give misinformation, and it's going to cause a lot of problems up front, down the road. It could blow the deal, and it's going to be a lot of animosity between you and your buyer, because if you're giving them misinformation and the builder has to kindly correct you, it's going to put a bad taste in your buyer's mouth. So if you want to be hands-on, just make sure you do a lot of research ahead of time. If not, the builder normally is grateful for you to be there every step of the way, so you're educated as well. But if you don't know, just fess up, you don't know.
John, how do you charge the buyer for any commission shortfall? So like Steve had mentioned earlier, we're in a different market right now. Builders are not as apt to pay as much as what we expect. How are you handling that shortfall with your buyer?
Well, first things first is make sure that you are being paid something. So I always make sure that in a situation in which maybe a buyer is going to a community where maybe there's some options, I would reach out to all three builders and say, hey, I've got Bob Smith. He's a buyer client of mine. We're going to be shopping builders, and I'd like you to sign potentially a compensation agreement saying that you're going to cover my fees. It's twofold. One, it protects you, it protects your fees, but simultaneously, it also lets the builders know that they're on equal playing ground. When I'm working, let's say Steve's my client, Steve, we're going to be working with builder A. Well, builder A doesn't know if builder B is paying me a commission or not, right? So if I have that blanket statement that all parties kind of have that everyone's paying that fee, they actually kind of like that. So they know that 2.5% or whatever your fee is going to be consistent amongst all the quotes. So that's really important. But when it comes down to getting paid, if you're not the cause, if you're not showing up to that open house or you're not showing up to that builder rep and signing that client in to begin with, you're definitely not getting paid. And that's mainly with more of that track builder style. Maybe custom builds you can be a little bit more loosey-goosey with, depending upon. But at the end of the day, I think it's really important that you're representing your client. And if Ryan Homes is the builder and they're only offering you $4,000 commission for what may have been a $10,000 or $12,000 commission, I'm not one to really beat my clients up about that, but that's a personal choice. I'm really looking forward to the long term, and I want to maintain good relationship with my clients. I'm not going to ask them to come out of pocket an additional $8,000, whatever the differential is. Although you could, if you do have that blanket statement on your buyer agency agreement, but that's just my opinion. So I don't know.
Have any one of you had a shortfall where you went to your client and asked them to make up the difference? So there's no discussion. It's take what you can get. What happens if you represent the client and you didn't go to that first meeting and the builder cuts you out? Then what do you do?
I mean, again, I think everything in life, business, excuse me, it comes down to relationships. So, I mean, these are all discussions that I think we should all have with our clients. We're all professionals, especially with the builder. I mean, personally, me, I've been a builder for many years, and then I've been a realtor for many years. So I've worn both hats. If a realtor comes, I would say 9 out of 10 times, a client would come to me as a builder before they had a realtor. And of course, they have a realtor the next day or whatever. I would never fight that as a builder because I wanted them to bring me more clients. And it just comes down to relationships. So I think any builder, that would cut out somebody that has an agreement signed that has something in the multi-list right now, I'd be shocked. Especially larger builders. But I mean, it's a whole nother topic. This business is changing. Our commission structures are going to change. The buyer's agency is definitely going to change. I think we're going to become more consultants. I'm not going to get into all that right now, but you're going to see a lot of changes with buyer commission in the very near term. I have a lot of ideas and opinions on that too.
Thank you. Holly, do you write a sales agreement or do you use the builder's agreement?
You actually use the builder's agreement. They typically have their own standard agreement that they prefer to use, and it has a lot more information in there as far as and I always read the contract before my buyers even see the contract, because just coming from working for a builder for many, many years, and now, I'm on the other side of things, but the builders will put things in there, you want your client to know if this is a builder that's not going to allow them access unless a job superintendent is on the property. Because a lot of times if they show up and the property's locked and they can't get in, or they're told that they can't get in, that's a precedent that you want to set prior to. The builder's contracts will also sneak some things in there, like the fact that the builder's not going to split the transfer tax, so you want to make your buyer aware of that. There's one builder in Hanover who puts in every contract that if the house doesn't appraise for the value, that they will still purchase the house. And I always put lines through that and initial, and he knows that I do that. So, it's not a surprise, but yeah, that you definitely will have to become familiar with the builder's contract.
Lines through it. How's the builder? How do they usually accept that?
Well, I used to work for him. And he just knows that that's just, and it's one of those things too. I don't think it's probably ever been an issue for him. So the fact that it's in that contract, and he allows me to do that.
Does anyone else make any changes to the contract with the builder? John?
Well, two things. One, every builder is different, and we already know that. Our spec homes, we can do a Pennsylvania agreement of sale, normal agreement of sale. The good part about an agreement of sale is you'll split the transfers automatically. If you do a builder's agreement on ours, you're you as an agent need to make sure you understand that most builders, not all, will probably charge the buyer 2% transfer tax. So on a $500,000 house, you're talking $5,000 cost to your buyer. If the buyer doesn't know that, they go to settlement, and guess what? Surprise, there's $5,000 more than they expected. And then the other piece is, and we were talking a little bit about compensation, and I don't mean to go backwards, but one of the things our builder always does with every contract is there's a co-broke form attached to that. So with that co-broke form, the agent signs it knowing on the agreement of sale, this is what I'll be paid at the end. So you always want to make sure there's a co-broke form attached to it. That protects you. You know exactly what you're going to see come settlement day.
So do you do an estimate sheet, or do you go right off the seller, the builder's estimate sheet? How do you handle that?
Right. So if you're talking about estimate sheet on a new construction, I do not do an estimated sheet. I will give them a workup sheet, because the options and upgrades, that beast can go for anywhere from 20 to $50,000. And when I talk to a buyer, and I probably represent about 75% of my clients are both buyer and seller for me. So I have to be very thorough on everything I present. So on a cost sheet, I will probably tell them, now it's up to you in regards to what you want to put in this house. The average is between $25,000 and $50,000. And how you put your options and upgrades in, that's a you factor as a buyer. But you want to make sure they understand they're going to add to that number.
Emily, does the builder provide an estimate of cost up front, showing that 2% tax or showing the broker fee, all those things that we're used to doing if we're a buyer's agent on a normal purchase on a house that's already constructed?
I always did.
How are you disclosing that?
I always did. When I would go through the contract where it said that the buyer paid the 2%, I highlighted that because I made sure everybody knew everything up front. I didn't want anybody to have any kind of surprise at the end. So I let them know that if there was an issue, it was discussed then before the contract was even submitted. We did have, we had all sorts of addendums. So there was a specific addendum for each different item. The contract itself was maybe 6 pages. I would give a worksheet as far as their closing costs. And that was after we figured out what additions and upgrades they were going to actually put in the home. So if it was anything changed after that point, yes, that would be changed and I would update that for them. But whatever it was at the day of when we wrote the contract, if it was $50,000 worth of upgrades, that's what their estimate sheet showed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
So John, do you attend all the meetings with the builder?
No. So I think it's most important, like I said, up front, make sure you're there for the initial meeting. That's the biggest, the handoff. But simultaneously, being in the business for a while and doing a lot of new construction, I try to look at myself as also as a consultant, right? So if I'm there, I'm a third set of eyes. I'm helping look at the plan. If we're doing a custom build and there's a lot to look at, typically buyers are very focused on the fun stuff, right? The kitchen, the master bath. So I think it's important to talk about how this is going to work for you when you're looking at the scale of a room. And hey, this is only a 10 by 10 sized room. Do you understand how small that is? Doing things like that to kind of change their perspective a little bit, get them thinking, get them kind of focused on the things that will be important for how they're living in the home. And then sometimes talking a little bit about how they use the home. So it's like, yeah, we're talking about carpet here, but let's talk about how you're going to be using it. You have a lot of dogs. So does that make sense? Should we do the whole first floor in hardwoods or engineered, things like that? So I will go normally, and I do a lot more of the custom build. So it's a longer process, but being there to help them during the design. And then once we get the design locked down, we get pricing back for that review, and then subsequent meetings after that for small things I don't necessarily attend. And then I kind of just do maybe like a weekly, bi-weekly check-in phone call with them. And then obviously moving forward, just let them know to call me at any point. And then sometimes working with custom builders, you're not working with a huge team. So typically it might just be the builder that you're talking to. So I also make sure that I'm a resource for that builder, because sometimes the builder can't communicate with the buyer. So I'll be an in-between there as well. So just making myself as available as possible.
So Steve, in that light, what things do real estate agents do to screw things up for the builder? Tell us what we shouldn't do.
Probably the biggest thing is be a hero. The biggest thing realtors do is they love to show their value sometimes, and it's not necessary. And it can get the realtor in trouble and get their buyer in trouble, because, we're not, realtors love to give legal advice too, which I think is terrible. We're not lawyers, we're not builders. But no, again, it comes down to relationships. I mean, first of all, you shouldn't be bringing your buyer to a builder you already haven't done your due diligence on. So you should know who the builder is. You should know their financial background, people they've built for. I mean, I knew everything about every builder around here when I was really focusing in on the game, because it was important to my customers. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things but everyone's answer here is, I think, were great, because all of us work with different builders. I mean, John's answers with working for a smaller builder, the smaller builder would love that. Plus he has a background in it. Not every realtor has a background in new construction. So I think my biggest advice is know who you're dealing with. And typically that will, you'll learn a lot from that.
How about you, Holly? Have you, real estate agents saying the wrong thing, messing up a deal, making it worse? or no issues?
You know, it's been so long since I worked for a builder. And the first builder I worked for was S&A Homes. Do you guys remember S&A Homes? Yeah. So that's a while ago. And now that I'm on the other side, where when I worked for the builder, I was normally the dads that were like more of an interference than the realtors. But yeah, I don't remember
What-
if that was an issue back then.
Yeah, we know how much real estate agents like to talk. So it's like,
Yeah.
like John had said, trying to show their value. It's like, I got to say something because it's getting quiet here.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, like, I handled things more like John did, you know, like just bring them in, introduce them to us, and then like, we're going to take good care of them and we'll pay you at the end.
Okay, great. So how about you take the next question, Holly? What items should we be cautious of when dealing with a builder?
Oh gosh. And I'm even married to a builder. So, like just looking for those things that are hidden in the contract. I think, you know, making your client aware of, you know, and typically when I start out with with somebody that I know wants to build, we'll sit down and kind of do like a consultation so that, you know, I know what they're looking for. And then I pretty much could, you know, figure out which builders may be the best fit for them. And then make a couple of appointments and, you know, call ahead, like John said, to make sure that they know. But I'm going to let somebody else answer that question because I don't really. Anybody have a good answer?
No, it's just like what I said before. Know who you do your research. I mean, the biggest thing I would look at is the builder's financial wherewithal. You know, I mean, that doesn't take long to find that out. Just talk to other agents, talk to top producers, call the listing agent, ask them to supply references, especially when you're dealing with a smaller builder. Because as I was stating to a lot of people here, I mean, I can talk about Landmark and Garmin and all the larger builders, but you know, there's a lot of smaller builders out there, and the information on them is just not as prevalent. So that's my biggest thing: is do your due diligence. But I would 100% would want to know if I'm entering into an agreement, especially if I'm getting a construction loan for a builder. I would want to know what their financial standing is. So.
Yeah, I would say it's okay also to let that builder know. Say, hey, listen, I want to do my due diligence, and who's the bank that you work with? I want to talk to your lender. When I was running a new construction development, we had 3 approved builders. All 3 of those builders I called, talked to their lenders, wanted to make sure they were in good financial standing, because before the meeting started, you know, we were having conversations about builders who aren't in business anymore. And I mean, we're talking within a 10, 15-year window, right? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so Steve's saying he worked for most of them. I don't know if that's a good thing. No, but at the end of the day, I think it's really important to talk to your client about what they're looking for in the home. Because if I'm going to go to a track builder, I'm not going to get a full custom build. I'm more than likely, I'm going to have a couple different options, a couple different elevations for each option. And if that's okay, that fits most people. I think that's a lot easier, especially for newer buyers who don't want to undertake a full custom build where they can get everything under the sun and source from all these different places, and the pricing is much more. So it's important to understand their budget and what they're looking for. So that way, like she was saying, you can really kind of guide them into which builders are going to make sense. And then obviously which areas, because you know, some track builders will build on a scattered lot somewhere, but a lot won't. So it's important to kind of know those details.
Emily, what's the change order? Explain that.
A change order is after you have your contract, you have your ratified contract with everything you want in the home, any upgrades or any additions. If you want to change something, it's a change order. Normally there's going to be a fee associated with that. The fee might not make sense. I think we charge $500 per change order, even if you wanted to add knobs, because then everything had to go back through admin, through having drawings done. So it didn't make sense a lot of times, the change order fee to the buyer. It's just another part of the puzzle. You have to just explain it to everybody up front. And I explain that up front. If you have any change orders after the contract is ratified, this is going to be your fee. Doesn't matter how big or how small the actual item is.
And I was going to say, to add to that, it's really of like why you want to hire me to be your buyer's agent for new construction. That's a good example, right? Because by hiring me, I'm going to help you avoid some of these potholes and pitfalls that are going to be coming up to hopefully make it a smoother transaction and save you money.
Same question, John. How do you deal with change orders, or do you, like John Loftus said, you try to head that off before it happens.
Well, you're going to have change orders regardless. I mean, it's just going to happen. And it's actually part of a builder's contract. It'll say in there your cost per change order. And actually the big thing is going to be the dates. So the reason you have the change orders, because there's something you want and you want to change something. The reason it costs is because, you know, now you're putting a delay maybe on this build based on what that change is. For example, all of a sudden you don't like the tile. You don't like whatever the case may be, you're changing it. So you put delays on, that's also a cost of builder. You have to reorder something, put it back. So these things impact costs, they impact time, and time, of course, is going to cost the builder money. So,
And just to be clear, the change order is, like you had said, $500, but you're also going to pay for whatever the upgrade may be. If there's a downgrade, it's still $500 or whatever.
it's going to still be the charge.
Exactly.
But back to one of the things that we were talking about that you want to be careful of. And one of the things when I sit down and I don't do the full selections, I will get you, when you sit down with me, I will get you pretty much, you know, you tile, blah, blah, blah. I always explain to people that, you know, you can, and I had a guy do this. He had a beautiful tiled shower, but he wanted all these jets coming in from all these different directions. And that's how he wanted the shower. And I always explain to people, that's a U factor now. That may not add value when an appraiser comes in, but it adds value to you as a person because that's what you want. So if that's important to you, go ahead and put it in, but understand when the appraisal comes in, they see a tiled shower. They don't see a tiled shower with jets hitting you in every different direction. So one of the things you always want to explain to folks as they're getting ready to buy, and it's exciting. I mean, listen, it's exciting. They're building a house that they want, not someone else's house, like a resale. This is their house and their place. But when you put things in, they don't always add value, but they add something personal. So anyway.
All right. Next question. What's the difference between a tract, spec, and custom builder?
The builder I worked for, sometimes they would have spec homes. So they would start building the house. It never went under contract. So they'd finish it out completely. Sometimes they'd take it to drywall. So that way the people could still pick some of their finishes, because it's hard to sell a new home, a new build that somebody else put the finishes in. So you don't get to pick any of the colors, any extra features or anything like that. As far as a tract home, if somebody else wants to take that.
You mean like a tract builder, right? So like high volume. Yeah. So high volume builders, they're typically going to be in, planned communities where they're planning to build, potentially hundreds of homes. And that was kind of what I was talking about before, where this builder is more looking like a McDonald's. Hey, we're selling high volume, lower margin. So they want to get a lot of people in. They typically have large advertising budgets, a lot of lead funnels where, like Steve was talking about, the builder is the one who's procuring the leads. So they don't really, especially economically today, they don't need to pay you a lot of commission because they're yielding so much in return for their advertising that they're doing. Like in our area right now, like Charter Homes, I mean, Lancaster based, but they're doing a ton of stuff for a new community that they're getting ready to build. So they're funneling all those people in. So a tract builder is somebody more than likely high volume, limited options in terms of like versus custom. So custom's the complete opposite of that, if you wanted me to touch on that. So custom is going to be, maybe you're picking out it could be in a community where it's a bring your own builder or they have some custom builders, but truly you're starting from scratch. So there's going to be specific guidelines that you need to follow in terms of size and other things. But let's say it's a minimum of 2,500 square feet. You work with a designer, and then from there, you're building the house from the ground up, and every little thing is an option. So it's a much longer process. You're typically working with an architect. You're typically having 4 or 5 different rounds of meetings just for the design. So it's a much longer process versus a tract builder who's going to get you into the design center. Much easier. You're picking out what you want. I want option number 3 with the cabinets and the floors, and much easier that way. So it's a lot more detailed, but I don't know, Steve, you can add to that if you want.
No, I think you touched on. A tract builder, you hit it on the head. The tract builder, they have their own sales force. Often they're the own developer and they're the builders. They do everything. Semi-custom builders are what you're going to see And most $500,000 to $600,000 developments. To me, a true custom home is $1 million home. So if you're getting a home for under $1 million as true custom, that's almost unheard of in today's marketplace. Because if you're choosing a plan that they've built 25 times, just because you're picking your floors and your cabinets, that's not a custom build. That builder knows exactly to the foot what that house costs. A custom build is your own creation, your own design on your own land. That's what I consider a true custom.
All right, thank you. So I'm sure you get asked this a lot, Steve. How long is it going to take for my clients to get into that house?
So, all right. So what John said on a true track home, I mean, builders I worked for, it was typically 4 to 6 months, from the time that you met with the builder out on the sales, out on, excuse me, at the model home till the home was completed. I would say 6 months. I mean, even today, even on a semi-custom home, I think 6 months is still realistic. But just as John stated, I mean, if you're doing a true custom build, it's probably going to be at least a year. A true custom build. So I always tell people, in today's marketplace, you're at 4 to 6 months on what I consider to be a $600,000 home and under.
So, Holly, with that being said, 6 months to a year, depending whether it's a track home or it's a spec home or a custom build. How does the supplies affect that timeline? That could be for any of you. Are we experiencing any supply issues like we were maybe 2 years ago? And how's that affecting the timeline to get them into the house?
So my husband is a spec builder. So we buy a piece of land and he'll build a house, like speculating that he's going to sell it. And we normally, make all the choices. And it was really bad for a while. During COVID, it was painful. But here, probably we have a home under construction right now in Fairfield, and we have not had any issues as far as supply, any of the materials. Even the contractors don't seem to be as busy as they were for a while. So things are, the schedule is being kept. Yeah.
The only thing I would add to what I would be more concerned about right now in 6 months to a year is not supplies, it's interest rates and money. So, one of the things you absolutely have to be on top of is your buyer's financing, because if you're out 6 months from now, most banks are going to lock that interest rate. A lot of banks do construction to perm loans, which will give you some options to lock rates in. But I mean, the Treasury note this morning just hit a 17-year high. So that means that the 30-year mortgage is high right now. It could go higher, which obviously affects what someone can afford. So, those are just things that that would be something that I would keep an eye on with my clients right now that are out more than 60 days.
So John, who's responsible for getting permits? Is that the builder?
Well, if I own the land, I guess I'm responsible for getting the permits. But you should have that conversation with the builder, right? The builder should be going out there and getting that. Make sure it's delineated inside of your contract, who's responsible for what. But at the end of the day, if you own the land, that's a different, situation. I've never run into an issue with that. I don't know if you guys have run into issue with permitting.
That'd be more like on like your own ground. So if you're building in a development, you don't need to worry about the permits. The builder will take care of that.
I have a question you guys didn't have. So we've heard from different clients or agents about builders who start a project and then they stop midway because of money issues, like Steve mentioned. It's happened way too often. How you represent the client? What do you do in that case?
So I have, number one, that's why one of the things I recommend to everyone just getting in this business, whether you're in it for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, develop a great relationship with an attorney who's local. I know everyone loves title companies, but that's why I do business with a lot of attorneys, because if I ever run into a legal problem, it's good to have a real estate expert there that can help you if you encounter that. So yeah, every single one of us should have in our back pocket a great relationship with a real estate attorney. That's a no-brainer. So that's certainly something that I would have.
We touched on a little bit earlier, Steve did, is how is new construction financing different? Anybody?
So most of the time, well, like my husband will carry the loan. We have a substantial line of credit. And so it's basically what you call turnkey or an end loan. But if you're going into a builder, most of the time they like for you to have a construction loan, and that's where you, like the first draw could be the takedown of the lot, and then from then it's divided. It's normally five draws, and they'll send an inspector out. The inspector will take a look, and it's the bank inspector, not like the township inspector, and then they will release the funds to the builder.
I can only speak once again for the builder I represent, but we do end loans like you do, and it's the best way. It's a large, I wouldn't say large deposit. Ours is on a $500,000 home. It's usually $20,000 down, and then we'll see you in 6 months when we complete the build. And ours is usually 5 to 6 months from the day we break ground. We'll have it completed, and then you'll have settlement. So keeping it simple. Some builders like to use preferred lenders. We just like to use lenders we know we can trust. And we've been around a while, so we know when a lender comes up, whether whatever lender it is, we know right away. If we see an internet lender, then we get a little nervous. But that's we discuss that with the builder when we're accepting the agreement. But no, end loans, $20,000 down, usually what it is, any options and upgrades from the time that we ratify the agreement, then it's usually 50% of the options and upgrades from that point on. And that's usually, so it's another 20,000. So they would pay another additional 10. So those are things that are all in the agreement of sale. If you go over the agreement of sale, there are no hidden pieces. It's all out there. You just have to make sure you as an agent understand it, and or have the representative sit down with you and go over it before you go over it with your client, and or let you want to just be educated on that agreement of sale. Know that all those pieces are in play there. All right.
So, Emily, is there an appraisal involved in a new build like there is on a purchase of a home that's already built?
Yes, as long as there's a loan involved, there is. If it's a cash, it's neither here nor there. But as long as there's going to be a loan on it, mortgage, they're going to have an appraisal done.
Has that affected any of the builders negatively? And what happens then? I see Steve shaking his head. John?
Yeah, so I happen to have one presently. I mean, thankfully we've had it ironed out, but it was the largest one that I've done in a very long time. It came in 200,000 under. So this is a true custom build construction loan. So, you get your appraisal up front, and I mean, this is a $1.6 million house that the appraisal came in at 1.4. And what happens in that situation? One of the things that's really important too, that dealing custom versus maybe somebody who's got their ducks in a row, is going to be just budgets. Oh, you've got a lighting budget, you've got a countertop budget, and making sure that that's in line with what you really want, right? So that's another one of the values that you can bring in, is kind of talking to the builder a little bit. Hey, can you explain a little bit more about what level this is? Or like it says a flooring budget here. What does that really include? And unfortunately, sometimes the buyer's going to have to come out of pocket cash. When you're dealing with higher end and luxury level, sometimes that's not as much of an issue if somebody has to liquidate some things. But at the end of the day, if they can only get that much available, then they're going to be stuck. Now, sometimes banks will do non-secured lines of credit if you have a very affluent buyer or somebody who is able to do that. But it's few and far between in that respect. So without a doubt, that appraisal can sometimes break the deal, which is why it's also important to get an out. So when the contract comes around and, hey, even you sign that, it's still contingent upon that appraisal.
So, Steve, is there an appraisal contingency? Does the builders allow that?
As whenever I was a builder, I mean, again, I was in communities similar. John at the end worked in, homes 400,000, 500,000, 600,000. There's 100 of them in the development that all have been built in the last 2 to 3 years. I mean, typically the appraisal comes in at the price, but you get into finishing a basement, or like John had mentioned, putting in a custom shower, you're not going to get the value back for that. And I'm always upfront with people. Where you run into a problem, the only time I've ever ran into is typically VA. Because if you get a VA appraisal on a new build and it doesn't appraise, you don't really have any other option than to lower the price. Which, as a builder, we operate on a margin. So our price is a price built in with a margin. So that's why it's so hard to negotiate on new construction. In John's case, in a higher end home, I mean, I mean, a higher end buyer shouldn't be concerned about an appraisal as much because chances are they're using mostly cash. I mean, I don't know what the limit on the conventional borrowing now. It's probably what, 500,000, 560,000, you know, before you'd have to go to a jumbo loan. So, I mean, if someone's building $1.5 million house, I mean, they're bringing a lot of cash to the table. So the appraisal's irrelevant at that point. So it's really more in developments. And, you know, I just know right now I would never accept a contract as a builder with an appraisal contingency in it, just because, I mean, you're taking a lot of risk there. So just my advice or my opinion.
I have a client right now who we're working with a builder, and they wanted to build the barn dominium, which is like the new craze, and not as popular in this area as they are, you know, like in Texas and that sort of thing. The appraisal was cut by 75,000, and you know, and we had worked for months and months and months on this, and this was their dream. So they had a condo that they owned in Bel Air, and they were fortunate enough to be able to you know, they had the equity in that. And so we listed it and we sold it. We got it sold. We didn't even have to move like their closing on their construction loan back because it sold so quickly. And then the builder was actually willing to come down 20,000 too. So it was, everybody worked together to make it work.
So what's the state of the new construction right now? Is it still in an upswing? Is it slowing down? Is it holding steady? Where are we at, and where do you think we're headed over the next year?
So from my perspective, my husband also has a framing crew, and I know right now he's still very busy. If I could clone him, you know, he works for several different builders in the Hanover area, and there really hasn't been much of a slowdown that I've seen.
I'm going to be the pessimist here. I think next year is going to be very difficult for builders. Interest rates are going to continue to rise. Consumer debt's the highest it's ever been. People are tapped out. I think I've worked in the first huge boom in 2004 to 6, and I feel like we're in 2007 right now, which we're 6 into 7 where our values are high, right? So in 2006, that's when real estate values peaked and interest rates were also higher at the time compared to previous years. What happened is you had a correction. So I mean, again, I'm speaking on behalf of not realtors, but builders. That's one of the reasons why I'm a home remodeler now and not a home builder, is because I think some of these builders are taking some pretty big risks at high interest rates. All you need is a couple homes to sit, and it can put them in a pretty dire financial situation. So I'd be very cautious if I was a home builder. But, you know, again, everything's regionalized and our region is still cranking. But prices are high up in my Mountain View development. I mean, some of the prices are 600,000 now. And I'm like, I don't know how these people are buying these houses, but we'll see.
I agree with what Steve was saying. John, did you want to add anything?
I can tell you that last year, this year we're in right now, 2023 is probably my strongest year on the new build. But I do see the tailing off of that business. But until inventory picks up on the resale piece, new construction will probably still push for a little while because there's just no inventory. Yeah. So when you're out there, my big challenge to my builder was get me enough houses really quick before this thing changes. And that's what our plan is right now. We've got, I think, 7-8 lots in phase 1 to finish up. And we've already slotted all 8 of what we're going to put in for next year. So it's all about, you know, you as an agent, you know, you build your relationship. And I know Steve's talked it a bunch. You build that relationship with that builder. They, you know, you need to tell them, hey, listen, here's how I feel about the market. Here's what I'm seeing. And they can now make they're builders. Remember that they know how to build houses. Your job is to inform them of where we're going in the market. So when you do that, you build that relationship. So we're slotted for 8 big ones next year, and then we'll see what happens.
So a quick question for Steve, maybe not so quick, is prices are going up and up and up. Is it because the market is so light on inventory?
Well,
Or are
like,
materials going up
no,
in
materials,
relationship?
a lot of materials have come down. So it's just like anything else. Whenever you go to a restaurant and they raise their prices, when do you go back and see them lower their prices if the food went down? It doesn't happen. So I think builders right now are definitely making more money. I think margins are higher. Lot prices are definitely up high. That's going to dictate the price of a house. So, I mean, what could happen? It's like the reverse effect. If rates actually would go down, I think it'll actually hurt new construction because you're going to see a flood of resale homes hit the market. Right now, there's a lot of people that want to move that haven't. So that's what's kept the supply so low. If you're in a 3% interest rate, you're not trading out to 7. If rates go to 5, you might be like, you know what? I need a new house. So that will, it could do the opposite. Normally when rates go down, prices go up. I could see rates going down and prices going down. Just my opinion.
Okay. So that's the list of my questions that I had. Did you anyone have any feedback or anything else you wanted to add that we didn't talk about with regards to new construction? We'll put it out if
I think one of the big things that a lot of people up here have, if you are somebody new into the business or you've mainly done resale and haven't gotten a new construction, is learn about new construction. So it's go to the open houses, if you go when they're building a house, understand the different aspects of a build so you can really prove value to your client. And I think that's one of the big things. If there's a big takeaway that you can take from me is understand how a house is built enough that you're not saying I'm a contractor, you're not saying I'm an attorney here, but you're a consultant, you're somebody there, third set of eyes, and you're able to talk the talk. And I think that's really big is when somebody who doesn't, this is maybe the first time they've ever built a home, they want to feel confident that the person that they've partnered with to do this understands what they're doing so they can lean on you as a resource. If nothing else, just to like pat them on the back and tell them it's going to be okay, right? Because a lot of times the anxieties are really high, stress is really high, you're picking a lot of stuff. So when you're talking about a home, it isn't just like, oh, I love this paint color. They don't really need a friend to like consult them on their paint colors. They want somebody to talk to them about how this investment is going to improve their life, how the roof trusses are going to be going in. Is this a poured foundation? Is this a Superior foundation? You know, what's the type of floor joists that are in there? All those things are going to be really important to show value.
Emily, I had another question. So builders have preferred lenders, preferred title companies. How does that affect the buyer if they don't go with those preferred lenders or title companies? Does it increase their price or decrease their price if they go with those companies?
There were fees set that if you didn't use the builder's title company, what they charged to put everything together to send it to your title company of choice. That again was all upfront and disclosed. As far as a lender, there wasn't really anything. Yeah. It was
my favorite is we're going to pay you $3,000 commission, but we're going to give your buyer $3,500 commission to use our approved title company and lender. So it's just like, wait a minute, if I wanted to give half my commission over, I could just do that. You don't have to take credit for me, giving away my fees, but that's just my cry.
What Steve, what were you going to say? Something was illegal.
Legal. I mean, nobody can force you to do that. But they definitely probably, they do. Yeah. And I guess that's how they do it. I mean, I don't know. I always let it up to the person. I never got involved in that.
We're going to put it out to the group, out to Zoom, to people in person. Are there any questions you have of the panel? Justin.
Just to hit a little bit more on what Steve was talking about with interest rate concerns on the part of the builder. And in talking with some commercial lenders, I've heard that a lot of the projects out there don't work with financing involved. So with interest rates continuing to climb, I would anticipate there might be fewer construction projects actually coming online. And like you said, rising interest rates, unless someone has a pile of cash to put in. 4%, I'm paying, I think on my float right now, it's 8.5, and I have prime, the best rate you can get from Midtown Bank. Yeah, it's and I think we could see fewer projects come online, or more of these projects are these self-financing giant home builders, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we're already there. So that's what I'm saying. Like when you're dealing with a smaller builder, it's totally different than going into these track communities, but they're going to dominate even more as this evolves because of their deep pockets
until the other shoe drops, whenever that may be,
correct.
Whatever that may look like.
Yeah, they might even benefit from that too. But I mean, yeah, I mean, land prices aren't going down. So, I mean, labor is getting more and more expensive. So it takes labor to put in roads, sewer, water, gas, all those things that require a development. So those costs aren't going down. They
I
can't.
think our market looks a lot like, suburban Frederick and outside the DC Beltway did 20 years ago.
Yeah,
And
Montgomery County. I
yeah.
mean, if you look at how Montgomery County got built, you're watching it happen here pretty much right now.
thanks.
Mary, are there any questions online? I can't see that. Here you do it.
Does anybody have any experience with putting a modular on a foundation? And if so, what are the cautions with doing so?
My caution there would be, again, make sure the bank knows what they're building and it can be approved. I know sometimes those get tricky. I've never built a modular home. I know there's a big difference between a modular and a manufactured home. So typically modulars, from my experience, have been easier on financing, but I don't have any experience building anything like that.
All right. Any other questions, Justin?
How would you recommend an agent bring value to a builder that they wanted to work with? How do you, go in there and,
Me represent.
yeah.
Well, you're not going to probably get into a J. Myers as an agent to represent them. Is that correct?
Myers. Yeah.
Bring them land. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That is probably the only way.
Bring me in. I'll let you.
Yeah, most builders, when you talk to them, and if you're bold enough to actually go up to a builder and ask that question, 9 times out of 10, they're bring me land. Right? It's give me opportunities to build, and you might be that person. But simultaneously, what I said earlier is understand the craft, right? Understand, be able to talk the talk, because if you're going out and if Steve's the builder and I'm selling 3 or 4 of his homes, well, I look at it as I've earned the right to have that conversation. And Steve should look at me as, man, this guy is a great lead source for selling my product. So why wouldn't we want to partner together and create great synergy?
So, Steve, in response to that, if I'm an agent, I'm representing a client that's thinking about selling land, I should come to you first.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'd love to. If it has water and sewer and gas, if it doesn't, do not come to me. I want nothing to do with well and septic systems.
Any other questions online?
You said to educate yourself about like the building and so forth. How do you really go about doing that? Are
That's a
they
great-
open and giving you
That's a great
information?
question. I mean, when I started, what I did was I actually, like he said, I wanted to get involved in new construction. I always had I wanted to learn about it. I would go to a lot of open houses. I would just show up while homes are being built a lot of times. And I developed relationships with realtors that work. So I was fortunate. I mean, I worked in an office when I first started with a lot of realtors that worked for a developer. So, I mean, that's how I had that background. I mean, again, as we stated earlier, there's less and less real estate agents representing developments now. A lot of it's represented by the builder's sales rep there, which makes it harder for you to learn. But I would just go out to as many open houses as you can at new construction, talk to people, talk to agents like us in the office that have experience with it. I mean, I know everyone here pretty well and everyone's friendly and will answer questions. I mean, that's how I learned. I just learned by going out and talking to people.
Builders Association.
I certainly didn't go to school for it.
So Justin said Builders Association.
Builders associations often run courses, certified new home sales professional, whatever. I know Harrisburg Association used to, but search around for new home sale professional certifications online, and you can usually find a builders association somewhere within a couple hours drive that's giving that coursework.
But there's nothing that trumps being in the field. So get your education, but reach out to agents that you might be. So let's just say that that's what I was getting ready to say. Like, so if John's hosting an open house and he's saying, hey, listen, I can't cover, go cover, because while you're sitting there, you're going to get inundated with, because this is a passive sales job where the builder and sales team are doing this marketing. So they're walking in the front door, right? So you're just there to answer questions. You're educating yourself on the floor plan options, sites, all that stuff. And even if it's something that you're not part of the listing team on, you're just there as doing an open, you're still educating yourself on the product. And there's a lot of symmetry between what they're doing at their community and what other builders are doing at other communities, that you can kind of take 80% of that, take 80% of that, and to really start putting together what you feel is a good presentation when you're talking with a buyer about building new construction, and then just parlay that and to keep doing it over and over to the point where now you can start working with these builders because you prove value.
So when I first started, I worked an open house every Sunday for another realtor. I got nothing out of it other than I tried to get buyers, obviously, and I wanted to learn. So that's the best advice.
Absolutely.
Okay, other questions? Any comments? Last comments? John wants to say something. John is never quiet. He always has something to say.
Big guy. Like
Holly, where does your husband get his, do realtors bring the buyers to you, or does he find them through his own? He's a small builder, you said. So where does he
Yes.
get his buyers from?
So Simon actually the last time brought a client to us. Typically it is like through word of mouth, because I mean we've built 5 homes ourselves since we've been married in 1990, and so and then friends of family and acquaintances and stuff like that. So typically like we'll sit down with someone prior to them even finding land, and it's not I think Simon was probably the only realtor that we've ever worked with, because he's just a super small builder.
Anything else, Miss Terry? No, she's in charge of this rodeo. All right. Any other questions, comments? Going once, going twice. All right. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Great job. A lot of good, useful information. Terry will get the recording out and to the rest of the office. Thank you much. Everybody have a great day.